I've used the lemon yellow to block in the main patterns on there. Now what I'm going to do is start blocking in some of the lighter areas there. And I'm just going to run it around the edge of the pastel, of the leaves there, where they're lighter. And I'll be getting in those lighter edges. Over here it starts to get a little bit darker because I think that one should be a bit bigger. So there we go, making it slightly bigger. Blocking those in, giving me a little guide. A little bit bigger too as I go. In here it's all quite light, so just giving all that segment there a little bit of a light. And then I'll have to re-establish it. So now all the way around there. Doing that with my hard contours. Now I'm going to go in with a sort of redder colour around the tips and just reinforce those. I will be coming back with those redder colours later on, but right now I'm putting them in as a guide, and they're more on the tips down here. As we get over to this side, I want to make it a little bit more shadowed, so I'm going to choose a darker one, a darker red, and we'll put a bit more depth into those ones over here. I will be coming back, sharpening these up later on, because I will lose them a bit. So it's really to give me a sense of where I'm going with this. Got that sketched in. Now I want to put in some of the greens, and I'm still going to go with the harder pastels here. Give it a bit of a going around those negative spaces there. Hi, I'm back home again after the class, and I'm going to continue with this. While you've been away, I just demonstrated a few different quick techniques on there for the class, and I'll talk about them as I go. I've got a palette here I've made up of some darks for the dark areas of shadow, some blue-greens down here, some light yellow greens, some mid-greens, and some red-oranges for around the little tips there. I have the reference photo here and just a bit of scrap paper to play on with the colours. And if you can see down here my big easel, what I've got is the two knobs. I just tuck this little rice-filled plate, bowl, just tuck the rice-filled bowl in there, and it makes a little palette for when I'm painting. And either side I've got some little pieces of soft foam that allows me to put the pastels on there without break. What I actually did while I was talking to the class was just on some of the leaves demonstrate a few techniques about colour mixing and edging, which I'll continue as I go along. So you haven't really missed anything because some of these leaves are still blank, and we'll work on those. What I'm trying to do here is get the very vibrant edges and tips of the leaves and then fill it in with the various shades of green. Cactuses have that bluey green colour on, so I'm going to be using some more bluey green pastels. Then I'll be using around the edge areas and for the highlights some lighter yellow greens. Then some mid greens to mix with the bluey greens, and then I'll have these deep purples and blues for some of the shadowed areas and some of the darker reds and oranges to be the tips there. What I'm going to work on now is just getting some of the shading into the leaves all the way around. So this whole sheet is going to be, red sheet is going to be covered with the greens, and I'm going to start on some of the background ones in here before I start working over the front of it. And those background ones are quite dark greens and bluer greens, purpler greens. So I'm going to start with some of my blues back in there and just fill in some of these spaces back here with blues, which I'll then add some green too. So here I go around there, filling in there, because these are the leaves that are quite in the shadow there. So that's, I've put in those, and I'm going to put some purples into that as well. I like that bluey colour I've used on there because it's a bluey green, but quite deep and dark and rich. And here I go all the way around. And I'll re-edge those as I go. That's why I'm just doing the background now. So I've got some darker colours in the background. I'm going to put in a bit more of a green in there as well, over the top of that. So I've got a dark green, which I'll just scrumble over it. So I'm not trying to cover up all the colours in the background. Just adding a bit of green to it. And that was a dark, deep green, but I'm going to put in a little, just a hint of the lighter greens as well over the top of that deep base I've put in. Because even though it's in shadow, I'm still seeing some of those more vibrant greens. I'm not really caring if I'm running into this other space. So that's just giving me a deep background there. I've got this one here which I don't want to be as deep, and I'm going to use, as I did here, I'm just running the pastel on its side in the direction of how the cactus grows. Okay, so I'm keeping on working on those there. I keep checking the values, so I know that I want this edge to be lighter. I'm not trying to replicate that reference photo. I'm just using it as a guide until I get things going, and then I'll put it away really and not refer to it anymore. Right now I know that this area is more in shadow, so I want to get that a little bit deeper and darker. I'm going to go in with a darker green there, just in that little area. And then to blend it in there, I just go back in with this and run it slightly over it. So it's blending just with the pastels. I also know that I want it to be a little bit greener in there. It's quite blue, so I'm using that very dark pastel I used there, just in right up close to the edges there. And it's just mixing with the blues and purples that I already had there. Just scrumbling it over the top. I don't want to lose all the colour of that I had in there, but I want to get it a little bit greener. So that's done that. I'm working all the way around now, trying to get the shadowed bits that I want, and all the way down into closer to each of the, where the petals overlap. It's going to be darker, so I'm just working my way around the whole thing now, on each separate petal, each separate leaf, just pulling out some darker greens right in close, where they're being overshadowed by the leaf under the overlapping leaf. So they're going in. And I'm not just going to keep it to the green, I'm just starting with that green, but I want to liven it up a bit with some other colours, but at the moment it's all going to be the green, and it will get livened up, as I said. So just putting those around the base of each leaf. And trying not to clog it up too much. This leaf I've left entirely, I haven't done anything with that yet, so in we go here, diving in with the darks, which are more up the centre of the leaf, and then it will get lighter as we go out. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm dragging the pastel, applying the pastel in the way that the plant grows. Much more believable than if you put it in a stroke that doesn't follow the form of whatever you're trying to describe. So putting that in. So I've now got a lot of the dark, deeper areas in. It becomes a lot light around the edges there, so I'm just popping that lightness around the edges. And that's on all of them. So just covering up some of that lemon yellow that I've got, and I'm re-establishing it up here with the lighter greens around the edge. You get a little sense of it in some spots. It's nice to play with a bit of linear stroking along the edges there. There's just something a little bit more. In fact, I'm going to make that the leaf come out to there. Just something a little bit more linear at the edge, so you get some nice sharp. They really add something to the whole quality of the painting to have some different strokes. I'm putting this green in all these leaves. As they go closer into the heart of the cactus, there's less of the red on the edges. So as I go in closer, I'm going to be obliterating some of the red. But these ones out here have a nice amount of red, so I'm not going to start obliterating that yet. Once we come into this area, it's all about different shades of green, different values of green. But in here, it's still got some of the lemon and the reds at the edges. I want to put a bit more of the bluey green in. I like that bluey green, so I'm just going to run a little bit more of that in some of these spaces. It adds a nice bit of variety if I can add some of that in. A little bit in this one. And over here I want to add quite a lot of it in. And again, just blending that by overlapping the different greens. So I'm just going back in with my dark green again and pulling it up into that bluey green. And allowing some of the red from underneath, that background colour to show through, which gives it a bit of sparkle. The cactus is taking form here. I will be continuing to work on it, so pulling it right out to the edges there. Going back in with the deeper greens. And I'll be running in some of the purples as well as I move out. Some of the purples are coming into play around the edges. Again, I'm going to reinforce some of those purples back in the shadows so that we get a sense of deepness but not boringness out here on the edges. So here I put some purple in and I'm going back in with the green over the top of it. I'm going to put in a little bit of that blue-green and add in a bit more of the purple. Some of that purple is going to go up into there as well. And I've actually got this, I think I want to bring that out further out here to be a bit more believable. It's going to come out that way. So I'm just going to have to work on that to cover up what I've got underneath. That means I'm pulling it quite hard, but then I'm going in softer with this blue-green over the top, and I'm going to be putting some of the lighter yellows around the edges. And I will be starting to play with some of these red colours now as well. So, pulling a bit of the red. And keeping some very bright sort of spots of, and I'm going to pull that out a bit more like so. I just correct these as I go because some of the drawing needs a little bit of correction. If I don't want it to be quite so bright around the edges, I just don't put as much pressure on it, so I just get a little touch of it rather than this very sharp sort of line I'm getting. Coming back down into here now into some of these little shapes, and I'm giving them some nice lemon edges, and then I'll be going back into those with some of the green. So they are coming out. So the shape is starting to take shape there, and there will be little places within where they sort of all curl around each other. Within here it's going to be greener, so it's still quite light in the heart of it, so I'm using some light greens. I will go in with some darker greens, but at the moment I'm just using some light greens. That will start to shape the heart of that. Around here it's going to have some of the red edges. Just sliding those in. And down in here it's just hardly noticeable as a red edge. It's just a little touch as they come closer in. And it just helps to define the shapes of some of those central parts. And this is all a bit dark, but that's okay. I'm going to go back in and start working on that. and lightening off some of the edges whilst keeping these lovely sharp and crisp. I'll probably even put a little touch of orange in there. I love a little bit of orange in my succulents. So that will come down around the edges there too, and it will be quite this sharp dark red around the edges. And you can see I'm still keeping that linear sort of drawing quality about it. Keeping a bit of the red in there. The little touch of orange that you get on succulents is really lovely against the bluey greens. So around here, adding in a bit more of the greens. It's just all gentle dragging the various greens over each other. Just bring the lighter green around there to work some of that in, and a little bit around that way as well. Back in with some bluey greens. I'll take some more of that bluey green up there again, and a little bit there. And really just working it back and forth till I get a really pleasing sense of varied greens, giving me some shadows and depth within the various leaves. Some warmer greens, some cooler greens. This one I really want to be a little bit more rounded, so just a wee bit more pressure, and it really will cover what's underneath it. So just popping a bit more of that around and giving it a nice crisp sort of spray of a little bit of the orange going in here too. Like so. They're really starting to come to life now. Lots of colour going on. Putting that cooler sort of green out there, but then giving it a bit of an outline with the orange, and a spiky bit of a tip on that one too. These ones are going to get a little zing of orange around the edges as well. And you can see I'm putting a wee bit of that in the interior ones as well. They need to have a bit more shadow in the heart of it. This needs all perhaps giving a little bit more of a blued off look to it. So we'll make that a little bit deeper and darker, so we'll blue that off a little bit. As we're coming out here, that's just going to be tipping over slightly, and rim it up again with a little bit of the orange and some of that red, just to really. And as it goes back, I'm going to make it a bit more yellow here. So I'm going to bring in those yellows. And I'm trying to have more pressure on the outside. So I'm holding my pastel so the sharp edge is on there, and then I'm picking it up as it lays back, so it doesn't lay. If you think about my hand there, it's laying so it's like that, rather than touching flat on it, it's kicked up at the back, and that means as I pull it around like so, it deposits more sharply on that leading edge and less as you go back, so it's helping to blend as I actually pull it. I'm actually going to pick up quite a pale greeny blue here and add some of that in as well on the edges, just to get a sense of cool light. And I like that particularly against the oranges there, so I'm just going to lay a little bit of the cool light round next to some of the oranges in a few of these spots. And again, it's contributing to the bluey greeny colour by just laying a bit of that over the greens that are already there, just trying to lighten off some of the areas. Just make them slightly cooler. When I squint, this is quite dark, and I do want it to be dark, but it's maybe a wee bit too dark, and I need to add a little bit more darks into there. So what I'm going to do is pull some of that purple out from underneath there and add a little bit in here. Just so we get a bit more of sense of shadow there. This one hasn't had much work done. I wanted a lot of the red showing through from underneath, so I'm just putting in some of the darker colours there. Don't want it too dark. I just wanted to get a bit of underlying shadow there before I start pulling in the rest of the bluer greens. And through here I'm now going to add in a little bit of lightness where it's tipping into the light and not having so much shadow underneath it, and it will be the same. There's more shadow over this side because it's running straight underneath that edge there, so there's more shadow there. But as it comes around here, it goes into the light. I'm trying to describe that, and I want to put in some more of this rich purple to do that, just to indicate that it's being shadowed by the leaf on top. So pulling it out, blending it in. And what I find with pastels is once you start a stroke, don't stop in the middle of it. Give it a nice vigorous stroke away from you, because I'm just making that dark as it goes around the corner into the bit more out of the light. Once you stop, you get, if you're using the side of the pastel, once you stop you get a mark there, so try to avoid that. Adding in a little bit more shadow under there. I probably won't leave it quite that dark under there, although I may. I want to add a bit more shadow in here because I don't really have any shadow behind these. So what I'm going to do is go round and add in a little bit of shadow around these, just to give them a little bit of definition. And I'm really just drawing in with my purple, the tip of my purple, the sharp edge of it, to get that kind of look. That needs to go more out that way. Then I'll have another, something like that. So I'm adding in some shadow and depth back here and just strengthening up some of those shadow areas around, coming up from the heart of it. You remember I put the purple on and then I greened over it. Well, now I'm going back in with some more purples there. And really, as in anything you're painting, as long as you've got the values right, it doesn't really matter about the colours. So if you want it to be more interesting and more colourful, when you've got the darks, the dark greens there, let's make them dark purple. Let's put in a bit of blues as well, and it will just help to make the whole thing a bit more interesting. This one it's not really blending in because I've left it with a different green, not the greens of the others. So I'm really wanting to go back in and put in a little bit of the bluer colours coming through there. And that is, and some of the greener colours, greeny blues. So get down there. That's tiny a bit, and here I want to go back in with some of the bluer greens as well. And you'll notice I'm not trying to fill every single bit of the leaf. I'm just trying to add in some interesting colour variations. Here I go again up in this area. And again in this area. And I'll get a little bit of it down here. Just making some little pullbacks here with from the purple to blend it in slightly with the other. The other colours that I have in there. It's getting a lot of nice colour going on there. I think I really need to try and work a few more of the yellow colours in there as well. So I'm looking for some of those. And it'll be the yellowy green colours that are going in. There's probably going to be a couple of very much lighter bits as well. Take a bit of the very light bits around here. I'm positioning those next to some of those blues and oranges that I have. So now I'm going in with some of these paler greens here and just trying to blend it in a little bit more with those yellows and purples. Just rearranging some shapes there that I didn't quite like. That one needs to be round and fatter, as does that one. So I'm just giving them a little work up there. I want some of that nice yellow to sparkle through, but not so much as I had. But now I'm going back in the yellows up here because I want a bit more of those lighter colours coming through on the edges. So just running that around. And I'm going to go back in and put some orange in there as well. So that's all going to get a little swish of orange. You're probably all familiar with that orangey look you get to cactus flowers. And that's what I'm trying to do, a little bit of the orange coming over the greens, warming everything up a little bit, but not taking over. Just giving us especially good back on these very dark ones in the background. It gives it a little bit of colour amongst the darks, a little bit of a lift without, because it's going on over very darks without making it too light. Because I've got the very lights coming in on the edges of the ones that are a bit closer in. So I'm getting that glow from inner here, which is what I'm after. I need to go back and tidy up a lot of edges now. So putting those tips in a very sharp way. Maybe pulling some of the red down a little bit further. That one up there, give that one a little bit of a sharpen up. Then I'm going back in with the yellow and the orange. I want to sharpen this one up here as well. Those touches of red are really lovely and work so well with the greens. I'm going somewhere between an orange and a red now to add in some extra variation. And in a moment I'm going to go back into my purples and add in some purples as well. So what I want to do is just rim some of these with a little touch of a very dark purple on the edge. It just helps them to stand out a little bit. It suggests a deeper tone at the tips. Dulls off the red a little bit and then allows it to come right again into the orange. Well, I pretty much like that, but now it's just time to get a few more of the final bits of colour in there. To I've strayed quite a long way from this original photograph because what I was trying to get was a much more colourful interpretation of it. I do want to make it a little bit more lighter in there, so I'm going in with the yellows. I may yet give this a quick little spray with my fixative and go back in and then jazz it up a little bit more once the fixative's on there, because I'm tending to clog up the paper a little bit now. And I'm thinking I may need to not sure. Thanks for joining me in the studio today. Hope to see you next time. Bye for now.